I want you to close your eyes for just a moment and think about that crushing weight sitting on your chest right now. That heaviness when you open the bills. That sick feeling in your stomach when the phone rings and you think it might be a creditor. That shame that creeps up your spine when you have to say no to your child, or cancel plans with friends, or pretend everything is fine when inside you're drowning. I know that feeling. I have sat with thousands of people who carry that exact weight, and I am here to tell you something that might sound impossible right now, but I promise you it is the deepest truth I have ever known. That debt, that lack, that suffocating scarcity that feels so real and so permanent, it is not your destiny. It is not your punishment. It is not even truly real in the way you think it is. And today I am going to share with you a method so powerful, so completely contrary to everything you have been taught about money and debt and worthiness, that when you truly grasp it and apply it, the very gates of abundance will swing open before you. Now I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, Florence, you do not understand. My debt is real. The numbers on those statements are real. The collection notices are real. The panic is real. And yes, in the material world, those numbers exist. But what if I told you that those numbers are simply the outer manifestation of an inner condition? What if I told you that trying to solve debt at the level of debt is like trying to cool down a room by holding ice cubes up to the thermometer? You can struggle and strain and work yourself to exhaustion, or you can go directly to the thermostat and change the temperature at the source. This is not about positive thinking or pretending your problems do not exist. This is about understanding a law as precise and unchangeable as the law of gravity. And in 1925, I discovered something that changed everything for hundreds of my students who were buried in debt, crushed by lack, suffocated by financial fear. They did not get second jobs. They did not create complicated budgets. They did something that seemed almost laughably simple, and their debts dissolved. Money flowed. Abundance became their natural state. Not because they worked harder, but because they finally understood how the game actually works. Are you ready to learn what they learned? Let me begin by telling you the most important thing I have ever discovered about money, about debt, about prosperity. Your word is your wand. Every single word you speak, every thought you think consistently, every belief you hold in your heart about money is casting a spell over your life. You are always speaking things into existence, whether you know it or not. The question is not whether you are creating your financial reality. The question is, what are you creating? Because right now, if you are in debt, I can tell you exactly what kind of words you have been speaking. I know this because I have heard them 1,000 times. I am so broke. I will never get out of this hole. Money just slips through my fingers. I cannot afford anything. I am drowning in debt. Rich people are greedy. Money is hard to come by. There is never enough. Do you hear what you are doing? Every single one of those statements is a command to the infinite creative power that lives within you. You are literally ordering the universe to create more brokenness, more debt, more lack. Your subconscious mind does not argue with you. It does not say, "Oh, you poor dear, you do not really mean that." No. It says, "Yes, absolutely, broke is what we are creating. Let me get right on that." And it does. With perfect, obedient precision. I had a woman come to me in 1923. Her name was Margaret, and she owed more money than she could possibly pay. Her husband had died, left her with 3 children and a mountain of his business debts. She was terrified. Every morning she woke up and the first words out of her mouth were, "I do not know how I am going to make it. I am ruined. We are going to lose everything." And I looked at her and I said, "Margaret, you are absolutely right. As long as you keep saying those words, you will lose everything. You are commanding it. You are decreeing it. You are using the most powerful creative force in the universe to manufacture your own destruction." She looked at me like I had slapped her. "But Florence," she said, "I am just being realistic. I am just stating the facts." And I said, "No, darling, you are creating the facts. There is a difference. A huge difference. The external circumstances are simply the old facts, the fruit of yesterday's thinking. If you keep watering dead seeds with your words, you will keep getting dead crops. But if you plant new seeds, speak new words, command a new reality, everything changes." Now, I know this sounds strange to your logical mind. Your logical mind wants to budget and plan and figure out where the money will come from. And I am not saying do not take practical action, but But I am telling you that no amount of practical action will overcome the subconscious pattern of lack that you are running. You have to go to the source. You have to change the word. You have to change the inner conviction. Because whatever you are convinced of in your inner world will manifest in your outer world, always. Without exception, this is law. So the first step, the foundational step, the step that makes everything else possible is this. You must stop speaking lack. Immediately, completely, as if your life depends on it, because it does. Every time you say, I cannot afford it, stop. Every time you think I am so broke, stop. Every time you start to tell the story of your debt and your struggle and your limitation, stop, because that story is creating your tomorrow. And if you keep telling the same story, you will keep living the same nightmare. Instead, you are going to learn to speak the truth. Not the temporary material facts, but the eternal spiritual truth. And the eternal spiritual truth is this. You are an inlet and an outlet to all the abundance of the infinite. There is no lack in the universe. There is only an infinite supply of every good thing, and it is your divine right to access that supply. Not because you earned it, not because you deserve it through suffering, but because you are a beloved child of the infinite, and it is the divine will that you live in abundance. Now your logical mind is screaming right now. It is saying, that is ridiculous. That is magical thinking. That is irresponsible. That is not how money works. And I say to you, how is your way working? How is the logical, practical, realistic way working for you? Are you free? Are you abundant? Are you peaceful about money? Or are you exactly where you were a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, still struggling, still stressed, still stuck in the same patterns? There is another way, a way that seems backwards and upside down to the rational mind, but works with perfect precision when you truly apply it. And I am going to teach it to you, step by step, exactly as I taught it to Margaret and hundreds of others who broke free from debt and stepped into permanent prosperity. But first, you need to understand why you have debt in the first place. And I am going to tell you something that may shock you. You have debt because part of you believes you deserve to be in debt. You have debt because somewhere deep in your subconscious mind, there is a belief that you are not worthy of abundant supply. You have debt because you have been hypnotized by the world's belief in lack and limitation, and you have accepted it as truth. Maybe when you were a child, you heard your parents fighting about money. Maybe you absorbed the belief that money is scarce, hard to get, easily lost. Maybe you were taught that wanting money is greedy, or that rich people are bad. Maybe you learned that you have to struggle and sacrifice to earn your daily bread. Maybe someone told you that you were not good with money, not smart enough, not disciplined enough, not worthy enough. And that belief sank down into your subconscious mind and began to run your financial life from behind the scenes, creating debt and lack and struggle as evidence that the belief is true. Your subconscious mind is like a garden. Whatever seeds are planted there will grow. If you plant seeds of lack, you harvest debt. If you plant seeds of abundance, you harvest prosperity. It is simple. But simple does not mean easy. Because you have been planting lack seeds for years, maybe decades, and now you have to consciously, deliberately, persistently plant new seeds and nurture them until they grow big enough to crowd out the weeds. This is where the method comes in. The forgotten method from 1925 that changed everything for my students. I called it the practice of speaking the word. And it has 3 parts, 3 steps that you must do consistently, with faith, with expectation, with absolute conviction. Are you ready? The first step is denial. Now, I do not mean denial in the sense of pretending something does not exist. I mean denial in the metaphysical sense of denying power to the appearance. You must look at that debt, at those numbers, at those bills, and you must say, either out loud or in your mind with great conviction, you have no power. You are not my reality. You are not my master. You are simply the shadow of an old belief, and I no longer give you my energy. I deny you. I deny the reality of lack. I deny the permanence of this debt. I deny the belief that I am a victim of circumstances. I deny that I am separate from infinite supply. This is not pretending the debt does not exist. This is withdrawing your fear, your worry, your mental energy from it. Because every time you worry about debt, you feed it. Every time you fear it, you strengthen it. Every time you rehearse the story of how big it is and how impossible it seems, you are literally pouring creative energy into it, making it bigger and more permanent. So you must stop. You must deny it your attention and your power. The second step is affirmation. Once you have denied power to the appearance of lack, you must affirm the truth. And the truth is that there is infinite supply available to you right now. You must create a statement, a decree, a word that declares the reality you are choosing to experience. And you must speak it with conviction, with feeling, with absolute faith. Not as something you hope will happen someday, but as something that is already true in the invisible realm and is now manifesting in the visible. Here is the exact affirmation I gave to Margaret, and I want you to feel the power in these words. Infinite supply is mine. The infinite intelligence of the universe knows how to pay every debt, and it now shows me the perfect way. I give thanks that every bill is now paid, every debt is dissolved, and abundance flows to me from expected and unexpected channels. My storehouses are full and running over with good. I see clearly the open road before me. There is no strain, no struggle, only the joyous outworking of infinite supply. Now, when Margaret first said these words, she felt like a liar. She felt ridiculous. She said, "Florence, this is nonsense. I do not have infinite supply. My storehouses are empty. I am going to lose my house." And I said, "Margaret, that is the old story. You can keep telling it if you like, and you will keep living it. Or you can start telling a new story, and you will start living a new reality. The choice is yours." She chose the new story. Every single morning, before she got out of bed, she spoke her affirmation. Every time fear crept in during the day, she spoke her affirmation. Every time she was tempted to complain about lack or worry about money, she stopped herself and spoke her affirmation instead. She wrote it on cards and put them around her house. She said it while she washed dishes, while she walked to the market, while she lay down to sleep at night. She saturated her consciousness with this new idea until it became more real to her than the debt itself. And here is what happened. Within 2 weeks, a letter arrived. A distant relative she had not heard from in years had died and left her a sum of money. Not enough to pay all the debts, but enough to pay the most pressing ones. Then a woman knocked on her door and asked if she would be willing to rent out 2 rooms in her house. Margaret had never considered this, but the amount the woman offered was exactly what she needed for the monthly expenses. Then, one of her husband's old business associates came forward and said he had always felt he owed her husband for a favor, and he wanted to settle several of the business debts himself. Within 4 months, every single debt was paid. Every single one. Not through Margaret's striving or struggling, but through what I call divine selection, where the infinite intelligence orchestrates circumstances and people and events to bring about the demonstration of the word that has been spoken. Now, I am not telling you this story so you will expect a distant relative to die and leave you money. I am telling you this story so you will understand the principle. When you change your word, when you change your inner conviction, when you plant new seeds in the garden of your subconscious, the entire universe rearranges itself to match your new vibration. You do not need to know how it will happen. You do not need to figure out where the money will come from. You need only to speak the word and trust the law. This brings us to a magnificent truth. The universe responds not to your struggle, but to your conviction. I have watched people labor for years under the belief that hard work alone brings prosperity. They toil from dawn until dusk, their bodies bent with effort, their minds clouded with worry. And yes, some measure of success may come, but it arrives slowly, grudgingly, accompanied always by exhaustion. This is not the prosperity I speak of. This is not the abundance that is your divine inheritance. The prosperity I describe flows effortlessly when you align yourself with spiritual law. It comes through what appears to be coincidence, a sudden opportunity, an unexpected check, a door that opens precisely when you need it most. But these are not coincidences at all. They are the law in action, responding to the word you have spoken in faith. Let me give you an example that illustrates this principle beautifully. A woman once came to me in great distress. Her rent was due in 3 days, and she had no money. She had looked everywhere for help. She had asked friends, relatives, even strangers. Nothing had materialized. She was on the verge of eviction, and with eviction would come the loss of her dignity, her sense of safety, everything she had built. I said to her, Stop looking to people. Stop searching in the outer world. The supply is within you, in your consciousness. Speak the word now. Declare that infinite substance manifests for you instantly, in perfect divine order. She looked at me doubtfully, but she was desperate enough to try. We spoke the word together. She declared, "Infinite Spirit, manifest my supply now. The money I need comes to me easily and immediately through grace." Then I instructed her to go home and give thanks, as though the money were already in her hands. 2 days passed. On the third day, the morning of her rent deadline, she received a letter from a distant relative she had not heard from in years. Inside was a check for the exact amount she needed, plus $50 extra. The relative wrote that she had felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to send money, that she had awakened in the night with this woman's name on her mind. This is how the law works. Your word goes forth and prepares the way. It moves people, circumstances, events. It orchestrates what appears to be magic, but is simply spiritual mechanics. I've watched students transform their entire lives through the consistent practice of speaking their word. One woman came to me drowning in debt, surrounded by chaos, convinced the universe had abandoned her. I taught her to stop reciting her problems and start declaring her truth. Every morning, she would stand before her mirror and say, "I am a channel for infinite abundance. Money comes to me easily and constantly. My supply is endless, inexhaustible, and immediate." She felt foolish at first. Her bank account screamed one reality while her mouth declared another, but she persisted. Within 3 weeks, an unexpected check arrived. A forgotten insurance refund. Small, yes, but it was the universe saying, "I hear you. Keep going." Within 3 months, she received a job offer that doubled her income. Within 6 months, every debt was paid. Did the words magically create money? No. The words changed her vibration. They opened her consciousness. And in that opening, opportunities that had always existed suddenly became visible to her. You see, you're not creating something from nothing. You're aligning yourself with what already is. The supply is infinite. The channels are countless. But you must tune your instrument to the right frequency. Your word is that tuning fork. I want you to understand something crucial. Your word doesn't manipulate God or the universe. It doesn't bend cosmic will to your ego's desires. Your word aligns you with divine will, which is always abundance, always harmony, always perfect right action. When you declare, "I am guided to my right place," you're not forcing doors open. You're allowing yourself to see the door that was always there. This is why affirmations rooted in fear or greed never work. "I must have money" reeks of desperation. "I am abundant" resonates with truth. Feel the difference? One contracts. One expands. Your word must expand consciousness, not constrict it. Let me give you a practice I've used for decades. Choose one area of your life that feels stuck. Just one. Don't scatter your energy. Focus it like a laser beam. Now, craft a statement that declares the spiritual truth of that situation. Not what appears to be, but what is in the divine design. If it's health, every cell in my body vibrates with radiant life and perfect health. If it's relationships, I am divinely connected to loving, supportive, harmonious relationships. If it's creative work, infinite intelligence expresses through me in perfect, powerful ways. If it's prosperity, infinite supply flows to me in perfect, abundant ways right now. These aren't wishes. They aren't hopes. They're declarations of what already exists in the spiritual realm, waiting to manifest in the physical. Now here's where most people stumble. They craft this beautiful affirmation, they speak it once or twice, and then they spend the rest of their day contradicting it with their casual conversation. They declare abundance in the morning and complain about lack all afternoon. They affirm health and then recount every symptom to anyone who'll listen. Your word is only as powerful as your consistency with it. This doesn't mean you pretend challenges don't exist. It means you refuse to give them authority through your speech. When someone asks how you're doing and things are difficult, you don't have to launch into a detailed account of everything that's wrong. A simple, "I'm working through something, but I know it's turning around," honors truth without empowering the negative. I remember a woman who came to me absolutely drowning in debt. She was speaking poverty constantly to her friends, her family, even to strangers. Every conversation was about what she couldn't afford, what she owed, how impossible it all seemed. I gave her one instruction: Stop speaking about debt entirely for 30 days. If she had to discuss finances, she was only permitted to say, "My financial situation is reorganizing under divine law." She thought I was mad. How could she ignore such pressing problems? But she tried it, and something remarkable happened. In the first week, her mind cleared enough that she found an error in her bank statements, an overcharge that had been repeating for months. In the second week, an old friend remembered a loan she'd completely forgotten about and repaid her. By the fourth week, she received an unexpected opportunity that doubled her income. The circumstances didn't change because she stopped talking about them. The circumstances changed because she stopped energizing the problem and started aligning with the solution. This brings us to a profound truth that many miss. Your words are not reflecting your reality, they are times creating times it. Every time you speak, you are not simply describing what is. You are declaring what will be. Your tongue is the pen, and your life is the manuscript being written in real time. I've watched people sabotage their own breakthroughs with a single sentence. They'll be on the verge of a financial turnaround, and then they'll say to a friend, "Well, you know how it is, I'm just not good with money." And in that moment, they've re-signed the contract with lack. They've recommitted to the old story. You must understand, the universe doesn't judge your words as complaints or affirmations. It simply receives them as orders. When you say, "I never have enough," the universe says, "Your wish is my command." When you say, "Things are always working out for me," the universe responds with the same unwavering obedience. I knew a man who wanted to change careers but constantly told people, "I'm stuck in this job." He used that word times stuck times, at least once a day. And indeed, every opportunity that came his way somehow fell through. His resumes went unanswered. His interviews led nowhere. He believed the job market was against him. But the job market wasn't the problem. His declaration of being stuck was the problem. He was speaking his own imprisonment into existence. One day I asked him, "What if you stopped saying you're stuck and started saying you're transitioning?" He looked at me as if I'd suggested he sprout wings and fly. "But that's not true," he protested. "I'm not transitioning, I'm stuck." "Then you will remain so," I told him, "until you change the word." He resisted for weeks. But eventually, the pain of staying the same became greater than the discomfort of changing his language. He began to say, "I'm in transition." At first it felt like a lie, but something shifted. Within a month, he received a call from a former colleague about a position he hadn't even applied for. Within 2 months, he had a new role that paid more and aligned with his true skills. Was it magic? No, it was the law. He stopped declaring himself stuck, and the universe stopped holding him in that pattern. And the same is true for you, right now, in this very moment. Every word you speak about your life is a decree. Every statement you make about your circumstances is an instruction to the invisible forces that surround you. When you say, "I'm always broke," you're not describing reality, you're times creating times it. When you declare, "I never get the opportunities others get," you've just ordered the universe to withhold those opportunities from you. This is why I'm so insistent about the words you choose. This isn't about positive thinking for its own sake. This isn't about pretending everything is wonderful when it's not. This is about understanding that your word is times law times in your world. Let me give you another example. A woman I knew who constantly said, "I'm terrified of getting sick." She said it so often, it became her identity. "I can't go there. I'm terrified of getting sick. I won't eat that. I'm terrified of getting sick." Do you see what she was doing? She was holding herself in a perpetual state of expecting illness. She was magnetizing the very thing she feared. I told her, "You must stop speaking that fear into existence. Your words are creating a mold, and life is pouring itself into that mold perfectly." She looked at me like I was suggesting something impossible. "But I times am times afraid," she said. "How can I not say it?" And here's what I told her, what I'm telling you now. You don't have to deny the feeling, but you don't have to give it the throne either. You don't have to make it your declaration, your constant affirmation. Instead, you speak the truth you times want times to see manifest. She began to say, "I am surrounded by perfect health. Divine intelligence governs every cell of my body." Was she instantly unafraid? No, but something shifted. Within weeks, the obsession began to loosen its grip. Within months, she barely thought about illness at all. The pattern was broken because she stopped feeding it with her words. This is the power available to you. Not someday. Not when you're more spiritual or more evolved. Asterisk. Now, asterisk. Right where you are, with whatever words come out of your mouth next. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are not at the mercy of fate or chance or bad luck. You are a creator, standing in the midst of infinite substance, and your word is the chisel that shapes your reality. So I ask you, what have you been declaring? What have you been affirming day after day, perhaps without even realizing it? Because here's what most people don't understand. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between idle chatter and sacred decree. Every word you speak with feeling, every thought you dwell upon with emotion, is taken as a command. It's being etched into the invisible substance that surrounds you, and that substance is extraordinarily obedient. I've watched people speak poverty into their lives with such consistency that they become master manifestors of lack. I can't afford it, they say, day after day. Money just slips through my fingers. I'm always broke by the end of the month. And then they wonder why financial struggle follows them like a shadow. They don't realize they've given that shadow permission to exist. They've fed it with their words until it became substantial enough to cast darkness over their entire experience. And it works in reverse, too. I knew a woman who decided to change just one phrase in her vocabulary. Instead of saying, "I can't afford it," she began to say, "How can I afford it?" Do you see the difference? One is a declaration of limitation. The other is an invitation to possibility. Within 3 months, unexpected opportunities began appearing in her life. A promotion she hadn't applied for, a side project that brought in additional income, a financial gift from a relative she barely knew. The universe had been waiting for her to ask the right question. Your words are not just describing your reality, they are prescribing it. They are writing the prescription that the universe then fills with exact precision. This is why I am so insistent, sometimes to the point where people think I'm being extreme, that you must monitor your speech. You must become aware of what you're saying, especially in those unguarded moments when you think nobody's listening, because somebody is always listening. Your subconscious mind is always listening. The creative force of the universe is always listening. Think about the phrases you use habitually. That makes me sick. This is killing me. I'm dying to see that movie. These are not harmless expressions. They carry vibration, they carry intention, and if you say them with enough feeling, with enough repetition, your body hears them as instructions. I'm not saying you'll drop dead from using a figure of speech, but I am saying that careless language creates careless results. What if, instead, you spoke with the awareness that every word is a seed? What if you spoke about your finances with the same tenderness you'd speak to a child? What if you described your body with reverence? What if you stopped predicting disaster and started affirming arrival? I worked with a woman once, a brilliant woman, sharp as a tack, who came to me exhausted. She couldn't understand why her business kept stalling. Every time she got close to a breakthrough, something collapsed. A client would back out, a partnership would dissolve, the money would vanish before it ever reached her hands. I asked her to keep a journal, not of her actions but of her words, just for 3 days. Write down every single thing you say about your work, I told her. Every offhand comment, every joke, every complaint. When she came back to me, she was pale. I had no idea, she whispered. She showed me the pages. This is going nowhere. I'm spinning my wheels. I work like a dog and get nothing for it. It's a dead end. I'm just throwing money down a body down. Drain. Dead. Drain. Nowhere. Nothing. And she wondered why her business felt lifeless. Your words don't just describe your reality, they prescribe it. They write the orders that the universe fills. You are the director, the playwright, the narrator of your own existence. And most people are narrating tragedies without even knowing it. So here's what I want you to do. Starting today, begin to listen to yourself, not critically, not with shame, but with curiosity. Notice the language you use about your health, your relationships, your income, your future. Do you say, "I'm broke" when you mean, "I'm being careful with money right now"? Do you say, "I'm so stupid" when you mean, "I made a mistake and I'm learning"? Do you say, "I'll never find love" when you mean, "I haven't met the right person yet"? The difference isn't just semantic, it's vibrational, it's directional. One version closes doors, the other keeps them open. And yes, I know this feels tedious at first. You might think, Does it really matter if I say I'm dying for a coffee instead of I'd love a coffee? And my answer is this: it matters because you matter. Your words matter because you are a creator, whether you accept that role or not. Every word you speak is a brick. You can build a palace or a prison, and most people, tragically, are building prisons with their mouths and calling it conversation. Let me tell you about a man I once knew. Successful on paper, good job, nice home, healthy family. But every morning he would say the same thing: another day, another dollar. Back to the grind. He said it with a smile, like it was harmless, like it was just what people say. Within 2 years, that man's work became unbearable to him, not because the job changed, because he had spent 730 days telling the universe that his work was a grind, a burden, a thing to endure. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflected that back to him in every meeting, every email, every commute. His words weren't describing his reality, they were creating it. Now contrast that with another person I knew, a woman who cleaned houses for a living. Hard work, physical work, not glamorous by any measure. But she had a phrase she used: I love bringing order to chaos. I love making spaces beautiful. And she meant it. That woman now owns a successful organizing business. She didn't get lucky. She didn't have connections. She spoke her reality into being, one statement at a time, until the universe had no choice but to reorganize itself around her vision. You see, your subconscious mind is listening to everything you say. It doesn't judge. It doesn't filter. It simply accepts. When you say, I'm so broke, your subconscious says, understood. Broke is what we're doing. When you say, I never get what I want, your subconscious says, got it. Disappointment is the theme. It is a faithful servant. Terrifyingly faithful. It will move heaven and earth to make your words come true. Think about this carefully. When you say, I knew this would happen, what are you really admitting? You're confessing that you saw the disaster before it arrived. You held the image, you rehearsed the pain, and the subconscious mind, that tireless worker, said, very well, you have given me my orders. I have watched this pattern destroy marriages, businesses, health itself. A woman came to me once, wringing her hands. My husband and I always fight about money, she said. Always. I just know we're going to argue tonight when he sees the bills. Then you have already written the script for tonight's drama, I told her. She looked startled. But I'm just being realistic. No, she was being creative, destructively creative. There is a vast difference between wise planning and doom prophecy. Planning says, I will prepare for various outcomes. Prophecy says, I know exactly which terrible thing will happen. One is wisdom. The other is witchcraft of the darkest kind, self-imposed curses. The subconscious cannot tell the difference between a prediction and a preference. When you say, I'll probably catch that cold going around, you have placed your order with the universe. When you say, this investment will probably fail, you have withdrawn your faith and poisoned the ground where success might have grown. I want you to become a detective of your own speech. Hunt down these phrases. That's just my luck. These things always happen to me. I never get a break. I'm sure it won't work out. Each one is a brick in the prison you're building around yourself. And here's the maddening truth. You are both the prisoner and the architect. You hold the key, but you keep hiding it from yourself with these declarations of defeat. Do you see? The subconscious mind is listening, always listening. It doesn't judge whether your words are wise or foolish, optimistic or pessimistic. It simply says, I hear you, I will make it so. This is why the ancient teachers spoke so carefully about the power of the word. This is why scripture says, the tongue holds the power of life and death. This wasn't poetry. This wasn't metaphor. This was time's instruction, asterisk. Because when you begin to speak as if the thing were already done, the universe has no choice but to reorganize itself around your words. I've watched it happen so many times that the shock has worn off entirely. A woman came to me once, dragging behind her years of debt like chains. I am free from debt, she declared, though her bank account screamed otherwise. Within 6 months, money came from directions she never knew existed. An inheritance from a distant relative, a settlement from an old case, opportunities that seemed to spring from nowhere. She didn't manipulate anything. She didn't scheme. She simply spoke the word, and the word became flesh. This is where most people stumble. They think the process should times feel, times logical. They want to see the bridge before they cross the river. But spiritual law doesn't work that way. It responds to faith, not sight. When you say, I am successful, while your business is crumbling, you're not lying, you're times prophesying asterisk. You're calling forth the thing that does not yet appear in physical form. And the invisible realm, where all things originate, hears you and begins construction immediately. I remember a man who wanted desperately to reconcile with his estranged brother. Years of bitterness stood between them like a wall of stone. Every time he thought about reaching out, old wounds would flare up, and anger would consume him. One day, I told him, stop recounting the past. Stop telling the story of betrayal. Speak only of reconciliation as though it's already accomplished. He resisted at first, but Florence, he said, you don't understand what he did. I replied, I don't need to, neither does God. What I need you to do is stop giving power to the old story. Write a new one. So he did. Every morning, he would say, my brother and I are at peace. Love flows between us freely. He felt foolish at first, speaking words that seemed to mock his reality. But he persisted. And then, without any action on his part, his brother reached out. A simple letter arrived, an olive branch extended. Within months, they were restored. The man wept when he told me. I didn't do anything, he kept saying. But he had. He had done times everything asterisk. He had spoken the word. And what followed was extraordinary. Within days' times, doors began to open that had been locked for years. Opportunities arrived in forms he couldn't have imagined. The perfect position materialized, not through his frantic searching, but through a chance conversation with someone he'd met years before. It's as if the universe was just waiting for me to get out of the way, he told me later, his voice filled with wonder. This is the great paradox that so many of us miss. We think we must times do times everything, when what we really need to do is times allow times everything. We think our effort creates the results, when really, our effort combined with resistance creates delay. It's only when we speak the word and then times release times it into the invisible law that the true work can begin. Think of a farmer who plants seeds. He doesn't stand over them, pulling at the tiny shoots to make them grow faster. He doesn't dig them up every evening to check on their progress. He plants, he waters, and then, this is crucial, he times trusts asterisk. He trusts the invisible intelligence within the seed, within the soil, within the whole system of nature to produce the harvest. His work is necessary, yes, but it's his trust that allows the manifestation to occur. You and I are spiritual farmers. We plant our words into the invisible soil of consciousness. We water them with faith and expectation. But then we must step back and allow the divine timing to unfold. We must resist the urge to dig up our seeds of demonstration to see if they're growing. We must refuse to let doubt poison the soil of our minds. I knew a woman who wanted desperately to heal a relationship with her sister. They hadn't spoken in 15 years of silence built on old hurts and stubborn pride. She came to me exhausted from her attempts to force reconciliation. She had written letters that went unanswered. She had tried to orchestrate meetings through relatives. She had pushed and planned and manipulated, and nothing had worked. Give it to God, I told her simply. Speak your word for divine harmony and perfect reconciliation, and then release it completely. She looked at me as though I'd suggested she do nothing at all, and in a sense I had. I had suggested she stop doing the times wrong times thing and allow the times right times thing to be done through her. You see, you think your word alone is powerless, I said to her gently. You think speaking it once or twice is like whispering into a windstorm. But I tell you, the word spoken in faith has set in motion forces you cannot see with your physical eyes. Your work now is not to repeat endlessly or to worry the thing into existence. Your work is to times rest times in the certainty that it is done. She left that day uncertain, I could tell. The human mind wants effort, wants struggle, wants proof of its own industriousness. But 3 weeks later, she returned to me, breathless and bright-eyed. Her husband had written. He had thought of her constantly. He wanted to come home. The reconciliation happened so naturally, so gracefully, that she almost forgot she had ever been in despair. But I barely did anything. she said to me, still amazed. Exactly, I replied. You finally got out of the way. This is the spiritual paradox that confounds so many. The less you interfere with your own good, the faster it arrives. Your anxiety is not helping. Your worry is not protection. Your mental rehearsal of disaster is not preparation. All of it is resistance masquerading as responsibility. I knew a man once, a businessman who had lost everything in what seemed like one catastrophic week. Investments gone, reputation damaged, partners turned against him. He came to me in that particular kind of masculine desperation where the jaw is set firm but the eyes betray absolute terror. I have to fix this, he kept saying. I have to make calls, make deals, make something happen. And how is that working? I asked him, not unkindly. He looked at me as though I'd slapped him. I haven't started yet, that's why I'm here. I thought you could. I don't know. Pray for me or something while I figure out my strategy. Your strategy is the problem? I told him plainly. You are operating from fear, and fear is the poorest business advisor ever employed. Every decision you make from this state will compound your difficulty. I watched him struggle with this. Men, particularly, are taught that surrender is defeat, that to stop striving is to stop living. But I say to you, there is a difference between surrender and resignation. Resignation is giving up. Surrender is giving over. Resignation says, nothing will ever change. Surrender says, I cannot see the way, but the way is being made. When you resign yourself to circumstances, you become a victim of them. When you surrender to divine order, you become a vessel for miracles. I knew a woman who had been unemployed for 8 months. Every door she knocked upon seemed to close before she could even speak. She came to me in despair, saying, I've tried everything. I suppose this is just my lot in life. That is resignation, speaking, the voice that believes struggle is permanent and help is impossible. I said to her, you have been trying with your human mind alone. Now try with the divine mind. Speak your word of truth. Infinite intelligence knows the perfect place for me, and I am led to it now by divine guidance. Then let go. She protested, but I must keep looking. I must keep trying. Yes, I replied, but there is a difference between inspired action and frantic grasping. One comes from faith, the other from fear. Within 2 weeks, she received a telephone call from a former colleague she hadn't spoken to in years. A position had opened, one perfectly suited to her gifts, paying more than she had dared to ask. She had not applied, she had not networked, she had simply released her grip and allowed the divine plan to unfold. This is the mystery. When you stop clutching, the universe can finally place something in your hands. You see, your human efforts are not wrong, but they must be guided by something greater than anxiety. You cannot force a river to flow faster by thrashing in it. You must align yourself with the current. And here is what most people do not understand. Surrender does not mean inaction. It means inspired action. It means you move when you are moved, speak when you are prompted, rest when you are led to rest. You become an instrument, not a battering ram. There is a divine timing to all things. You plant the seed, but you do not dig it up each day to see if it's growing. You water it, you trust it, you allow the earth to do what the earth knows how to do. Your job is to prepare the soil of your consciousness and then to wait with faith, not with dread. And here's what I want you to understand. Waiting with faith is not passive. It is not spiritual laziness. Faith is active. Faith is a decision you remake, sometimes moment by moment. When the doubting thought arises, and it will arise, you do not fight it. You do not wrestle with it in the mud of your mind. You simply refuse it entrance. You turn your attention back to the vision. You say, calmly and with authority, no, I do not accept this. I know the truth, and the truth is that my good is already mine. This is what I call time's watchfulness asterisk. You are the guardian at the gate of your own thinking. You decide what enters and what is sent away. I knew a woman who wanted desperately to reconcile with her estranged daughter. Years had passed. Harsh words had been spoken. The silence between them had become a wall so thick she could hardly remember what it felt like to hear her daughter's voice. She came to me weary, heartbroken, convinced it was too late. And I said to her what I say to you now. It is never too late for love to do its work. But you must stop feeding the narrative of separation. You must stop rehearsing the pain. Every day, she began to bless her daughter in her mind. She pictured them laughing together. She saw her daughter happy, free, whole. She did not beg, she did not plead with the universe. She simply held the vision and gave thanks that it was already done. 3 months later, her daughter reached out. A simple message. "I've been thinking about you." That was all it took. The ice broke. The way was made clear, and within weeks, they were speaking again, carefully at first, and then with warmth, and then at last with love. Was this magic? No. This was law. This was alignment. This was a woman who stopped watering the weed of resentment and fear and started watering the seed of reconciliation. You must understand, the universe does not hear your words. It hears your conviction. It responds to the feeling tone you are broadcasting. If you say, "I want love," but you feel times unworthy of love, you will continue to attract experiences that confirm your unworthiness. If you say, "I want abundance," but you feel times lack, you will magnetize more lack. This is why affirmation without belief is empty noise. You must align the mind, the heart, and the imagination. They must sing the same song. I've seen countless souls practice this mental discipline with stunning results. A woman came to me once, drowning in debt, her mind a chorus of worry. Every morning she would wake and immediately begin counting her lacks. I owe this, I owe that, there's not enough, there will never be enough. Her imagination was a projector showing only films of ruin. I gave her new words. God is my unfailing supply, and large sums of money come to me quickly, under grace, in perfect ways. But words alone she needed to see differently. I told her, when you speak these words, you must feel the relief. You must see the checks arriving. You must hear yourself laughing with freedom. She resisted at first. But it's not true, she said. I am in debt. You are describing what times was asterisk, I replied. Now you must describe what times is to be asterisk. The bridge between the two is built in your imagination. Within weeks, unexpected money came. An old debt was forgiven. A new opportunity opened. Not because she begged or manipulated, but because she stopped feeding the wolf of fear and began nourishing the truth of abundance. This is the great secret the mystics have always known. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot declare prosperity while nursing images of poverty. You cannot affirm health while replaying scenes of sickness in your mind. The mind must be singularly focused, undivided, clear as a bell. And here is where many stumble. They think this work is about pretending. I'll just ignore reality, they say, closing their eyes to problems. No, this is not denial. This is time's higher sight asterisk. You acknowledge the appearance, yes, but you refuse to give it power. You see beyond it to the truth that is forming. When you cut your finger, you do not sit and mourn. I am wounded forever. No. You clean it, bandage it, and trust the body to heal. You expect restoration. Why? Because you know the truth of the body's nature. Apply this same knowing to every area of life. The spiritual mind sees with the eyes of faith, not with the eyes of fear. Faith is the telescope that brings distant things near. Fear is the magnifying glass that makes small things appear enormous. You choose which lens you look through every single moment. I knew a woman who was facing what appeared to be an impossible deadline. She had 3 days to raise a sum of money or lose her home. The appearances were desperate. Everyone around her spoke words of sympathy tinged with defeat. It's impossible, they said. 3 days is simply not enough time. But this woman had been trained in the science of faith. She sat quietly and spoke to the invisible. God's supply is limitless and immediate. There are no delays in divine mind. What is mine comes to me by grace in perfect ways. She refused every fearful thought. She turned away from the evidence of lack and looked steadily at the evidence of abundance all around her. The trees that never worry about their leaves, the birds that find their food, the perfect order of the universe. On the 3rd day, from a completely unexpected source, the full amount arrived. Not a penny less, not an hour late. It came through a distant relative she had not heard from in years, someone who suddenly felt moved to help. The visible world rearranged itself to match her invisible conviction. This is not luck. This is law. The universe is not chaotic, it is responsive. It answers the word you speak with your consciousness. Your faith is your word, and your word sets causation in motion. Now, here's what most people do not understand. Faith is not something you work up through effort. Faith is your natural state. Doubt is what requires effort. Doubt is the learned response. A child does not doubt. A child asks and expects to receive. A child lives in the eternal now, where all things are possible. You must become as a little child to enter the kingdom. This is not poetic language, it is instruction. Return to the consciousness of expectancy. Return to the state before you learned to fear, before you absorbed the world's limitations, before you agreed that struggle is necessary and lack is inevitable. Watch how you respond when a desire arises in your heart. Do you immediately begin calculating how it could happen, counting your resources, measuring the distance between here and there? This is doubt masquerading as practicality. Or do you feel the quiet knowing that what has been given to you as desire already exists in the invisible, waiting only for your recognition? The bridge between the invisible and visible is your awareness. Not your effort, not your manipulation. Your simple, steady awareness. When you speak in faith, you're not demanding. You're not begging. You're not conjuring. Your time's recognizing asterisk. You say, Infinite Spirit, open the way for my right work, my right home, my right relationship, and you let it go. You don't follow it with doubt. You don't pick it back up 5 minutes later to inspect it, turning it over in your anxious hands like a worried child with a broken toy. You speak it and you times it. This is where most people stumble. They speak the word, yes, but then they hover over it, watching, waiting, wringing their hands. Did it work? Is it coming? Maybe I should try again. Maybe I said it wrong. That's not faith. That's fear with a spiritual costume on. Faith speaks and walks away whistling. Faith plants the seed and goes about its day. Faith knows the garden doesn't grow faster because you dig up the soil every hour to check on the roots. I've seen it 1,000 times, people who affirm abundance while clutching their checkbooks in terror. People who declare divine health while obsessively cataloging every ache. People who claim their walls are Jericho's walls, tumbling down, while they're secretly reinforcing them with worry at midnight. You can't plant a garden and pour poison on it at the same time. Your words after the word matter just as much as the word itself. If you declare something in the morning and deny it by noon, you've canceled your own decree. You've become the house divided against itself that cannot stand. So guard the word, tend it. When doubt creeps in, and it will, because you're human, gently redirect. You don't fight the doubt. You don't wrestle it to the ground. You simply return to the word. No, I have spoken. It is done. I rest in that. This isn't stubbornness. It's loyalty to truth. And here's the paradox that confounds the intellectual mind, but delights the spiritual heart. The moment you truly release it, the moment you stop chasing and controlling and micromanaging the universe, that's times when it comes. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped times blocking asterisk. Your fear was the dam, your release is the river. I'll tell you what I've told countless others. If you're exhausted, you're doing it wrong. If your spiritual practice feels like dragging a boulder uphill, you've wandered off the path. The way of faith is lighter. It asks for attention, yes, for sincerity, absolutely, but not for blood, sweat, and grinding effort. It asks you instead to become quiet, to listen, to align yourself with the higher intelligence that governs every sunrise and every heartbeat without strain. I've watched people exhaust themselves trying to manifest through sheer willpower. They visualize until their minds ache. They affirm until their voices go hoarse. They push and strategize and manipulate circumstances, all the while wondering why their good seems so distant, so difficult to reach. And the answer is always the same. They're operating from the human level of consciousness, not the divine. You cannot muscle your way into grace. You cannot force the universe to bend to your timeline. What you can do, what you must do, is prepare the soil of your consciousness so completely that when the seed of your desire is planted, it has no choice but to grow. This is not passivity. This is intelligent cooperation with the law. Think of it this way. A farmer doesn't make the corn grow. He doesn't stand in the field yanking on the seedlings, demanding they reach full height by Tuesday. He plants. He waters. He trusts the process that has worked since the beginning of time. His effort is real, but it's aligned with natural law, not opposed to it. Your work is the same. You speak the word. You hold the vision. You refuse to give power to appearances. And then, and this is where most people falter you, let the infinite intelligence do what it does best. Arrange, orchestrate, and deliver. I once knew a woman who wanted desperately to move to a specific neighborhood. She had walked those streets, imagined herself living there, spoken her word with clarity. But months passed, and nothing happened. She grew frustrated, then bitter. "The law doesn't work," she told me. "I've done everything right." But she hadn't. She had done everything with tension, with desperation, with an underlying vibration that said, "I don't have this, and I need to get it." That's not faith. That's fear wearing a spiritual mask. I suggested she release the entire picture to divine timing. Not abandon it, release it. To declare, "This or something better now manifests for me in perfect timing," and then return to joy in her present circumstances. Within 3 weeks, an opportunity appeared that she hadn't even considered. A house, in that very neighborhood, offered to her under conditions so favorable they seemed impossible. But they weren't impossible. They were inevitable, once she stopped blocking the flow with her anxious striving. The universe doesn't respond to effort. It responds to consciousness. This is why affirmations without feeling are like seeds planted in concrete. You can repeat, "I am abundant," 1,000 times, but if your consciousness is saturated with worry about bills, the words are meaningless. The universe reads your vibrational state, not your vocabulary. I once knew a woman who covered her walls with affirmations, prosperity prayers on every mirror, abundance mantras taped to her refrigerator. Yet she lived in perpetual financial crisis. When I asked her how she felt times when she read those words, she said, "Honestly, I feel like I'm lying to myself." There was your answer. The affirmations weren't changing her consciousness. They were highlighting the gap between what she was claiming and what she actually believed. Each repetition reinforced the discord. So I suggested something radical. Stop the affirmations. Instead, find one times thing in your current reality that genuinely makes you feel abundant. Not something you wish for. Something that's already here. She sat in silence for several minutes. Then, quietly, "My friend brought me groceries yesterday without me asking. I felt cared for, provided for." "There," I said. "That's the feeling. That's the consciousness of abundance. Water times that times seed." She began a different practice. Each evening, she'd write down moments from her day when she'd felt provided for, supported, cared for, even in small ways. A stranger's kindness, a timely phone call, an unexpected solution. Within weeks, her entire financial situation began to shift. Not because she'd worked harder or worried more effectively, but because her consciousness had changed. She'd stopped arguing with reality and started appreciating the abundance that was already flowing, which naturally opened channels for more. This is the practice of gratitude as spiritual technology, not sentimental niceness. You're training your consciousness to recognize supply, and what you recognize, you magnetize. But here's where people stumble. They make gratitude another form of bargaining. "If I'm grateful enough, then times I'll get what I want." That's manipulation, not transformation. The universe sees through it instantly. Real gratitude has no agenda. It's pure recognition. When you say thank you for the breath in your lungs, the ground beneath your feet, the possibility in this moment, you're not trying to get anything. You're acknowledging what already is. And paradoxically, that acknowledgement shifts everything. Because consciousness precedes manifestation, always. Change the inner, and the outer must follow. It's law. Now, let me share something that revolutionized my understanding of this principle. I was working with a woman who had been affirming prosperity for months. Good, strong statements, repeated faithfully. Yet nothing changed. Her bank account remained empty, her opportunities scarce. I asked her a simple question. "When you say these words, what do you feel?" She paused, then admitted, "I feel like I'm lying. I feel desperate. I'm trying to convince myself of something I don't believe." And there it was. Her consciousness hadn't shifted 1 inch. She was using affirmations as a band-aid over a wound that needed actual healing. The words were right, but the consciousness behind them was still locked in lack. So we changed our approach entirely. Instead of affirming what she wanted, we began to identify and uproot what she believed. We discovered she carried a deep conviction that she didn't deserve wealth because her father had always said, "Money corrupts good people." She had unconsciously chosen poverty to remain good in her father's eyes. Once we brought this belief into the light, Once she could see it clearly, its power dissolved. She realized she could be both prosperous and good, that in fact, her prosperity could be an instrument of good. Within weeks, opportunities began appearing. Not because she affirmed harder, but because her consciousness had genuinely transformed. This is the work, dear ones. Not the surface repetition, but the deep excavation. Not pretending to believe, but actually shifting what you know to be true in your bones. And here's what makes this so powerful. When your consciousness truly changes, you don't have to force anything. The manifestation feels natural, inevitable, like fruit falling from a ripe tree. There's no strain, no desperation, no white-knuckling your way to belief. You simply know. And that knowing radiates from you like light, attracting corresponding conditions effortlessly. I've watched this happen countless times. The person who stops trying to get love and instead becomes love, they suddenly find themselves surrounded by loving relationships. The person who stops chasing security and instead cultivates an inner sense of safety, they find stability appearing in their outer world without struggle. This is the paradox that frustrates the logical mind but delights the spiritual heart. The very thing you're grasping for is repelled by your grasping. The moment you release it, it flows toward you naturally. Think of it like trying to catch a butterfly. Chase it desperately, and it flutters away. Sit peacefully in the garden, and it lands on your shoulder. Your outer world is not the cause, it's the effect. It's the shadow, not the substance. You can't change a shadow by manipulating the shadow. You change it by repositioning yourself in relation to the light. This is why affirmations alone often fail. You can say, "I am prosperous," 1,000 times, but if underneath those words lives a trembling fear of poverty, if your inner atmosphere is saturated with lack, then you're simply painting over rust. The corrosion continues beneath the surface. What's required is not better words, but a transformed consciousness. Not a new mask, but a new face. Not positive thinking layered over negative feeling, but a genuine shift in your inner weather. And here's what makes this practical, rather than merely mystical. You have tools. You have agency. You're not waiting for grace to strike like lightning. You're learning to become a conductor for that grace. The tool is attention where you place it, how you hold it, what you feed it. Your attention is not passive. It's creative. It's magnetic. Whatever you give sustained attention to, you give life to. You water it, strengthen it, multiply it. This is why I guide people to turn away from the problem and toward the solution. Not as denial, but as deliberate creation. You stop rehashing the difficulty and start rehearsing the answer. You stop reciting the diagnosis and start declaring the healing. You begin to speak the language of the solved problem, not the unsolved one. And here's what shifts. Your entire energy field changes. Your vibration changes. The frequency you're broadcasting into the invisible world changes. Because words are not just sounds, they are frequencies. They are tuning forks. And the universe responds not to what you want, but to what you are, times radiating asterisk. When you declare, "My body is restored to perfect health," you're not lying to yourself. You're not pretending the symptoms don't exist. You're choosing which reality you're going to feed. Because both exist simultaneously in the realm of possibility. The illness and the healing, the lack and the abundance, the problem and the solution. Your words determine which one crystallizes into form. I once knew a woman who was drowning in debt. Every conversation was about how broke she was, how she couldn't make ends meet, how the bills kept piling up. And I said to her, "You are building an altar to poverty with your words. Every time you speak lack, you are praying to it." She didn't like that at first. She said, "But it's true. I'm just being honest." And I said, "You can be honest about where you are without making it your permanent address." There's a difference between acknowledging a fact and worshiping it. So she began to change her language. Not fake affirmations plastered over fear, but a genuine shift in her inner dialogue. Instead of "I can't afford this," she began to say, "I am open to receiving this in divine timing." Instead of "I'm always broke," she said, "Money flows to me easily and often." Within 3 months, an unexpected inheritance came through. A side project began generating income. Opportunities appeared that hadn't existed before. Did the words create the money? No. The words created the time's opening asterisk. They shifted her from a closed, defended, scarcity-based frequency to an open, receptive, abundance-based one. And the universe could finally reach her. This is the mechanics of it. This is how spoken words rearrange the invisible before they touch the visible. You are not manipulating reality. You are times cooperating times with it. You are aligning your spoken word with the highest truth available, and that alignment becomes a magnetic force. So I ask you now, what have you been declaring over your life? What words have you repeated so many times they've become grooves in your consciousness? Are they words of abundance or scarcity? Victory or defeat? Worthiness or shame? Because I promise you this, those words are not idle. They are actively creating the framework of your tomorrow. Now, let's talk about the most powerful moment in this entire process. The moment when you speak your word, and then times release it, asterisk. This is where so many stumble. They speak the affirmation, they declare the truth, and then immediately they grip it with anxiety. They watch for results like a gardener who digs up the seed every morning to see if it's sprouting. That's not faith. That's fear wearing the costume of diligence. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't stand over it with a flashlight all night, do you? You trust the intelligence within that seed. You trust the soil, the water, the sun. You trust the times process asterisk. Your word is the same. Once spoken in faith, it must be released into the invisible law that governs all things. You do your part, you speak, you believe, you act as though it is already done, and then you times let go asterisk. I call this the law of non-resistance. You stop pushing, you stop forcing, you stop trying to micromanage the universe's delivery system. You simply say, it is done, and you walk forward in peace. This doesn't mean you become passive, it means you become times receptive asterisk. There's a tremendous difference. Passivity is collapse, receptivity is confident openness. You continue to move, to work, to show up, but without that strangling grip of desperation. You're not chasing anymore, you're times receiving asterisk. And here's what happens when you do this. The universe rushes to meet you. Doors open that you didn't even know existed. People appear with exactly what you need. Opportunities arrange themselves in perfect timing. Why? Because you've removed the interference. You've stopped blocking the flow with doubt, with control, with panic. You've aligned yourself with the current of divine order, and now you're being carried. And this is when life becomes effortless. Not because you're doing nothing, but because you're doing the times right times things, at the times right times time, guided by an intelligence far greater than your conscious mind. I've watched people transform overnight when they truly grasp this. A woman came to me once, frantic about money. She'd been affirming prosperity for months, she said, but nothing changed. I asked her what she did after her affirmations. I worry, she admitted. I check my bank account 10 times a day. I panic about bills. You see, she was speaking the word, but then immediately taking it back with her actions. She was planting seeds in the morning and digging them up in the afternoon to see if they'd grown. I told her, after you affirm, release. Go about your day with joy. Trust the process the way you trust the sun to rise. She looked at me like I'd asked her to fly, but she tried it. She affirmed prosperity, then deliberately chose activities that made her feel abundant. She took a walk in nature. She rearranged flowers in her home. She called a friend and had a beautiful conversation. She stopped checking her bank account obsessively. Within 2 weeks, an unexpected check arrived, a refund she'd forgotten about. A client who disappeared suddenly paid an old invoice. A relative gifted her money out of the blue. The money had always been there in the invisible, waiting for her vibration to match it. This is the law. Your word goes forth and does not return void, but you must let it go forth. You must release it into the invisible with faith, not clutch it with fear. And here's what most people don't realize. The universe is always times saying yes. Always. It never argues with you. It never contradicts you. Whatever you decree with feeling and faith, it says, yes, so be it. If you say, I am broke, the universe says, yes, you are broke. If you say, I am abundantly supplied, the universe says, yes, you are abundantly supplied. It's impersonal. It's law. Like the soil that grows both weeds and roses depending on what seeds you plant. The soil doesn't judge. It doesn't prefer roses over weeds. It simply grows what you give it. So what are you planting today? What words are you speaking over your life? Not just with your mouth, but with your thoughts, your emotions, your expectations. Because here's what most people don't realize. The subconscious mind doesn't just respond to your deliberate affirmations or your morning prayers. It's listening all day long. It's absorbing the casual comments you make about yourself when you stub your toe. It's recording the way you describe your circumstances to a friend over coffee. It's taking notes when you scroll through social media and think, I'll never have that. I'm not lucky like them. Every single one of those thoughts is a seed. And the law is impartial. It doesn't say, oh, she didn't really mean that, so I won't manifest it. No. It takes you at your word. It assumes you're placing an order. And it begins to arrange circumstances, people, and events to match the vibration of what you've planted. So if you're planting seeds of lack, you cannot be surprised when your harvest is scarcity. If you're planting seeds of fear, don't wonder why anxiety keeps showing up at your door. If you're planting seeds of resentment toward others who have what you want, you're literally pushing your own good away from you. You're building a wall between yourself and your supply. Now, I want you to think about something. How much of your mental garden is overgrown with weeds you didn't consciously plant? How much of it is just wild growth from years of unconscious thinking, absorbing other people's opinions, inheriting your family's limitations, repeating what the world told you was possible? Most people are walking around with a garden they never designed. They're just living in whatever grew from the seeds that were thrown at them. And then they wonder why their life doesn't look like what they truly desire. But here's the hope, the glorious truth that changes everything. You can begin again right now. You don't have to wait until next season. You don't need permission. You don't need a special ceremony. You simply begin to pull the weeds and plant new seeds. You start speaking differently, thinking differently, expecting differently. And the moment you do, the law begins to respond. Not tomorrow, not when you're perfect at it, right now. Because the law is always working. It never takes a day off. And here's what I want you to understand about this law working in your favor. It responds to your times now asterisk. Not your yesterday, not your past failures. Not the version of you that made mistakes or chose unwisely. The moment you shift your word, your vision, your inner conviction, that's the moment the law shifts everything into alignment for you. I've watched this happen countless times. A woman who'd been affirming poverty and lack for years, suddenly, in one afternoon, she grasps the truth. She sees that her words have been building her prison. And right there, she changes her tune. She begins to speak abundance. She begins to see herself as prosperous. Within weeks, things that had been blocked for years begin to move. Money flows. Opportunities appear. The right people show up. Was it magic? No. It was law. She stopped blocking her good with her own thoughts and words. You see, the universe isn't punishing you for past wrong thinking. It's simply responding to what you're broadcasting times right now asterisk. And the beautiful thing is, you can change your broadcast at any moment. Think of it this way. You're standing in a room with a light switch. For years, maybe you've been standing in the dark, complaining about the darkness, wondering why life is so hard, why you can't see your way forward. But the switch is right there. It's always been there. The moment you flip that switch, the moment you change your word, your vision, your inner talking, the light comes on, instantly. That's how immediate this law is. Now, does that mean everything in your external world changes instantly? Not always. Sometimes there's a lag between the shift in consciousness and the physical manifestation. Seeds don't become trees overnight, but the times law times responds instantly. The wheels start turning the moment you align yourself with truth. And here's something else. The bigger the desire, the more faith it requires. Yes, but also, the bigger the reward when it manifests. Because you've stretched yourself. You've expanded your capacity to receive. So don't be afraid of the big dreams. Don't water them down because you think they're too much, too grand, too impossible for someone like you. The universe doesn't recognize too much. It only recognizes consciousness. And if you can conceive it, if you can believe it, if you can speak it into being with your word, then it's already yours in the invisible. And it must appear in the visible. This is the law. I once knew a woman who lived in a tiny apartment, barely enough room to turn around. She came to me and said, Miss Shinn, I want a beautiful home with gardens and sunlight and space for my children to play. But every time I speak it, I feel like I'm lying. I feel guilty for wanting more when so many have less. I looked at her and said, "My dear, your prosperity does not diminish another's. The universe is not a pie with limited slices. It is an infinite bakery, and every loaf you claim causes 10 more to appear on the shelves." She began to speak her word. "I give thanks for my beautiful home, now manifested in divine order." Every day, she spoke it. Every night, she visualized walking through those sunlit rooms. She didn't know how times it would come. She didn't strain or scheme. She simply held the vision and spoke the word. Within 6 months, a relative she barely knew passed away and left her a house, the exact house she had been visualizing, gardens and all. Some would call it coincidence, some would call it luck. But I call it law, the law of mind in action. You see, when you truly claim something as yours in consciousness, the entire universe rearranges itself to bring it to you. People you've never met will be moved to help you. Opportunities you never imagined will suddenly appear. Doors you didn't even know existed will swing wide open. This is not magic, it's mechanics. It's the divine mechanics of a universe that is designed to say yes to your every word.